I literally left my body and I was able to have this profound near-death experience in which my soul left its body and had a full crossing over experience. I felt my soul vibrate at a very quick pace. The analogy that I try to give, if you ever go on a roller coaster and you're going as fast as you possibly can, and it's just beyond any possible analytical thought, and you're just in this euphoric sense. And it wasn't scary, it was very familiar, but I just felt myself vibrating into this endless euphoria where there's no beginning, middle, or end. Or limitations on this euphoria that I felt. Moments later, I saw this beautiful, shining palace, and there were angels all around this palace, and their beautiful sounds were emanating from it, and the light was so bright in this beautiful golden palace that I just almost had to shield myself.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Jacob Cooper with us on the show today. Jake is a clinical social worker, author, and NDE survivor who helps people find purpose and conquer their fears about life after death. I'm excited to explore what truly scares us about the afterlife and to discover how Jacob helps people find peace beyond the fear. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with Jacob. Jacob, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted you could join us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie, for having me on. I'm a big fan of your podcast and your work for many years now.
Oh, thanks. I see you have a guardian angel behind you. A statue. For those of you that are listening, he's got it right over his right shoulder.
Literally and figuratively, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know there's a story behind that. You want to start off with that?
Yeah, I know. Listen, I'll follow wherever the tide, is intended to go.
Yeah. So tell us the story of the guardian angel over your right shoulder.
Well, I have the angel, uh, you know, uh, beyond my shoulder, because really that was a big part of my near-death experience was my encounter with the angelic realm during my NDE, in which I encountered, my two spirit guides, primary spirit guides, or some may call guardian angels. And so for myself, that plays such a big role in my life and a lot of challenging, uncertain moments of uncertainty. I always feel them, not just in my NDE, but throughout my life. And so I like to have, angels around me, not just for myself, but to really send to all the viewers listening to remind themselves how much beauty and just guidance that each and every soul has on their journey here on this earth school.
Okay, so you put in the T's that you've had an NDE. So what happened? Please fill us in on all the details.
Absolutely. I was, for viewers, I was just 3 years old. I just celebrated my 35th birthday just a couple of days ago. But
Happy
it
birthday.
was, yeah, yeah. But I was just 3 years old of September of 1993, in which at this time, my parents and obviously myself didn't know I contracted a very detrimental and even fatal condition called whooping cough, otherwise known as pertussis. And when you're an infant or a child or even adults, that could be very impactful on your physical health. And so I went to a playground just like any other child and just was trying to have a good time. And I just started to climb the ladder going up onto the slide when, my breath just became very belabored and to the point where I was literally suffocating and there was no oxygen whatsoever, and it was incredibly traumatizing, and just the scariest moment of my life. You'd imagine in the body that the breath keeps us going and not have anything to hold on to. It was just very traumatic, but I just knew kind of what was to come. I knew that, this was kind of it, or so I thought it was, and there was nothing I can do. So instead of struggling against, finding a sense of breath, I just was able to surrender and leave my body and surrender to this breath of eternity that I call it. And I literally left my body and I was able to have this profound near death experience. And it wasn't scary, it was very familiar, but I just felt myself vibrating into this endless euphoria where there's no beginning, middle, or end, or limitations on this euphoria that I felt. And I felt a sense of being at home, and saw this beautiful shining palace. And there were angels, just like you see around me, all around this palace. And their beautiful sounds were emanating from it. And the light was so bright in this beautiful golden palace that I just almost had to shield myself. But I just knew that was a depiction of the, I would just say, the centerpiece of creative life force, where all things emanate or created from. And it was so magnificent. In that moment, I just felt at home. I felt embraced. I felt all of my fears or possible fears or questions dissipate. And I just knew no matter what, there would be a meeting point between myself and my parents, and all would work out well. And I just had this peaceful moment of clear knowing that all is well, was well, will be well, and there's nothing to possibly worry about. And that's more of a human thing than it is of the soul. Moments later, I was able to see my beautiful, like we started the show, guardian angels, primary guides that were with me at this moment. And when I saw them, they were just the most beautiful, immaculate beings. Just I can't find descriptions or comparatives, but the feeling that I got was, oh my God, like they were there with me this entire time. I think we are living with a lot of, I would say, an increased epidemic of loneliness or isolation. And having this experience, and we could get into some of the lessons, but just for this experience, I wanted to highlight that there's such an illusion of loneliness or isolation. We have so many protectors and love and beauty around us all the time. And if we just remembered who is around us, there is no way we would see ourselves as a small being and live a small life. Because recognize we are a big, gigantic soul with a massive team around us. But when I was able to see my guides and I felt a sense of love, I tapped into the energy and I just saw that the guides were able to look up with the same degree of admiration, love, and unconditional respect and love that I had for them. And it was just like, you'd imagine some that you have the most tremendous admiration. You think they're like a million times better than you. Like, who am I to even be in the same sentence as them? And imagine those same feelings you have, that same person has to you. And that is really what I felt with the guides. And it was the closest extension of my soul that I could possibly have. They were right in the nucleus of who I was beyond just this lifetime. Moments later, I was surrounded by all the people that went to me on the playground on that day. And when I looked at all the people around me, I was able to see who they really were, which was an infinite, eternal spiritual being. And I was able to see their auric fields and their guides around them. And it was just this big angel fest, but it just reminded me that, you know, spirituality is sometimes reserved for people like, I don't know, the Dalai Lama or some of these other people. But at our core phyla, no matter what the human personality is, we all are mystical, divine beings at our very core. And I saw right in front of me all of these angels floating right in front of me. And I was like, holy, because all these things were around me, but when it's like right directly in front of you and you see it over, it was like right, it's like a thin little dial separating this realm and the angelic realm. They're all around us, not just behind me, but they're all here all the time. And I was seeing them, whereas the spirit guides were more concerned with myself. On a personal measure, these angels that I saw, to answer your question, were just sending energy, we're sending love, we're sending protection to the whole planet. And they were just looking ahead. They had no concept of self, they have no individual distinctions from what I gathered at the moment. They were just there to protect, love, and serve. And it was just the most beautiful sight. They were just, not wanting anything back, but just to give unconditionally. And I could see the light coming out of them and the love and the beautiful vibrational sounds and octaves. And it was amazing. Moments later, I had what I now call as a soul pod or soul group that came up to me. And these were beings that I knew that were familiar to my soul, that I lived many lives with before. And they came to me along with my own spirit guides that were with me and all the angels that were around. And I was just asked a collective question, which is, what would I do? Would I stay, here on the other side, and continue there, or would I continue my life? Bear in mind, most people are told, hey, there's more karma or there's more dharma that you're here to integrate, and it's not yet your time to cross over. And so I would say probably 25% of people have what I had, but probably 70 to 75%, based on the last research that I viewed, are told or dictated or even suggested, because there is nothing that the soul will do that it doesn't want to do, that it's not in agreement with, from my experience. And I just was not sure. I was just, this was such a beautiful place in front of me. I didn't know how I could turn this down, and nor would I think, why would I? But I just said, if I were to continue, my life, because I just wanted to know the biggest question that I'm asked when I present, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And I just kind of asked that to all the angels and the guides and my soul family. I was just shown this life review. And I may say, Jacob, that must have been a 2-second short film. And what I would say is, it was not. The life review that I experienced was, through the eyes of another and understanding the moments that I shared with my parents. And I always preface, to groups that I present with, like Helping Parents Heal that we're a part of, and Forever Family Foundation, that it really is not a matter of the years of your life, but rather the life within those years. And I just saw that there was a lot of life despite chronologically living a very short time. This life review transcended this particular lifetime, and I was jumping from different lifetimes before this lifetime, and I was able to see myself in different incarnations, like spanning the globe, at this time. Then I saw myself really speaking in front of a lot of people, and really not just someone who was like better than anyone or different, but rather just a simple reminder. And I was just one with each person that I was speaking with. It was the message. It wasn't really anything to do with me. And I said, at this moment, I saw the people that I would meet along this journey and this work that I would be doing. And I said, as beautiful as the other side is, this opportunity is something that I cannot ever turn down. And with that, I agreed to continue, to be here. And, the rest is sort of history, where with that agreement, I was able to see, all of the guides and angels started to leave my immediate awareness. And I just, in that moment, I could feel like, oh my God, what did I just do? I was just second guessing myself. And the guides just left me with one last message, which was to remember that you were created from a beautiful intelligence far beyond our own understanding, to trust that, and to have your thoughts really in parallel with the spirit realm, and to have a degree of trust. And with that thought, I woke up, on a hospital bed, and, the rest was history after that. But that is, a little bit of a short of my NDE um, experience, of September of 1993.
Did you have a family member? Did you have a parent or somebody with you at the playground?
I had family members. I wasn't with my parents, so to preface. I was with, kind of like, I would say my babysitter, more so like my mother's best friends who were with me at this time. So my parents were not with me, but I did encounter my mother afterwards in the hospital, when I was able to be transported by the ambulance.
The other thing that I find fascinating too, Jacob, is that you're 3 and you're getting all these very adult insights, which I think is a great example of how our spirit is timeless, even though our human body certainly has an expiration date on it, but that you were able to really do all of this processing when you were in heaven, even though you were a 3-year-old. Okay, I got a bunch of questions. First of all, You talked about music. Tell us about the music that you heard.
Well, what I would say is on the other side, I'll give an example. The colors that we have are based on really the sun. And so those are the spectrum of colors that we have. So it's hard to use the measurements, if you will, of this earth plane when we compare it to the other side. But it was a very high vibrational frequency. And I cannot sing. If I did, I wish I could. But it was just some of the most beautiful. I mean, I listened to James Taylor and the Beatles, and they're great, but it just didn't compare to that. But it was like there's a guy that I listened to named Stephen Halpern. I don't know if you know Stephen Halpern. He's a good friend of mine. So he has a lot of angelic choir type songs. And so I would say if you do listen to Stephen Halpern, listen to some of his music, particularly featuring the angels. It wasn't quite like that, but something along those lines, but just, kinda different and higher, nothing against Steve. He's using all the tools that we have here to try to, mirror or replicate, that, and he does a really accurate job, but I would say Stephen Halpern's music is some of the closest that I've experienced when I crossed over.
I talked to somebody not too long ago that told me that the music they heard during their NDE reminded them of dolphin sounds.
Dolphin, interesting.
Dolphin, yeah.
Yeah,
They're really high. And I said, "So you were talking with Flipper in heaven, huh?" And she said, "Well, yeah, I guess." But those high pitch sounds that they make and that they can communicate, she said there was that. And then we had Dr. Eben Alexander on the show too, Jacob, and he talked about that when he was hearing the music that it seemed to be higher and higher frequencies, and the music was what was carrying him to the higher frequencies. Did you have a similar experience?
I would say yes, but more so the vibrations. And, music is just vibrations in itself. So I would say about that's about right, that the vibrations and the vibrational frequencies in the music really helped elevate. But I think the biggest thing was just surrendering, letting go of the struggle that I had. And once I did that, once I let go, I didn't give up, but rather I gave in to the power that's inside of each and every one of us, that divine spark that knows no death, you know.
Yeah. How did you know that as a 3-year-old?
It was familiar, I think to preface for viewers who may be a little bit perplexed by this understandably, which my left brain was for a bit of time where I just said, "Geez, I was only 3 and I had all this stuff." And so I think really reality is based on where you're seeing it from. From a linear standpoint, it doesn't make any sense because we associate a 3-year-old associated with its body and very limited in what it can do and what it knows. But when you recognize that beyond that, you know, infant body is a eternal soul, is possibly an elder soul who has been here many lifetimes, you start to understand that there's a lot of recall and there's a lot more depth that meets the eye, as there is with life and all that we're doing in this industry. It goes just beyond, it goes well beyond the surface of what meets the physical eye. But I would say absolutely, and if anything was probably easier, I would say, because as an adult, we have all of our stuff that gets in the way and all of our beliefs. Whereas a kid, you're just coming from that realm, and so maybe, but perhaps more familiarized. But certainly, it wasn't short of its difficulties afterwards. That was a little bit more of the challenge. Dying was easy. Living, that was the challenge.
What happened when you came to in the hospital? I'm sure you've heard the story, certainly as an adult. Wh Was your family member the one who took you to the hospital? Did they call the ambulance? What went on? What was the story once you came back?
Yeah, no, I was rushed by the ambulance, to the hospital. And I just remembered being, once I was able to really gather my strength, because I was still very physically debilitated from this. And I had to, for months use nebulizers, inhalers. And, it was really bad. And I had a lot of issues with my bronchial cords after. It was a really bad cough that lasted for a bit of time. And, it was a little bit weird. because all of a sudden I had this experience and I just knew, yes, my mother, or father, great people, but I knew that they were and they were not my mother and father, if that makes sense. In this lifetime, they were. But as a soul, it's not like they owned me or they were better than me. They were just bigger than me. And I saw that my soul was not like owned by them or stuff like that. I just moved through them, and if you will. Uh, so from a human standpoint, they were my mother and father, but from a soul standpoint, I remembered, I have a father that is in heaven too, so
Well, you alluded to and mentioned a soul group. Tell us about your soul group and how did you know it was your soul group?
it was just a familiarity and knowing, I felt a degree of embarrassment at this moment when I saw them, and it's not from their perspective, but more so from mine. I in my NDE and post NDE, I remembered having this big charting phase, or people would call a life plan, before you get here. That's something that you really plan with your guides and with your soul family as to, what you're going to do in this lifetime, all of the commitments that you have. And so when I saw my soul family, in this moment, I felt like, in a way, like I was aborting that or not agreeing to that. It felt like you're about to go to the army, you had this huge party, and all of a sudden, a week or two later, you came back and you're just like, I don't know, that I didn't really fulfill what I intended, but that solely dissipated, and it was not at all to preface from them, but it was just a pure embrace. And I just remembered that I was able to really have a lot of different lifetimes with these individuals.
You said that you saw guides and angels. Can you tell us the difference between the 2, how they appeared to you, how they seem, how what your interactions were with
Yeah,
both groups?
that's a wonderful question. Um, you know, guides, and I use maybe social work terms here. That's my profession. But if you're familiar with the term micro, which means related to the individual, and more so macro, that relates itself more to the collective. I would say our guides, or primary guides rather, because I do believe we accrue different guides throughout the journey of this life. But before we're born, there's an unbreakable contract that we have with our primary guides. Now, I've learned it's not all souls have spirit guides, what I've learned with a lot of, teachings from Michael Newton's between life soul regressions and stuff like that. There are different soul types, really. And, some souls, their guides and through regressions that I've had is just their higher self. And some have, primary guides. Those are more earth-based souls, which I do believe I am, but there are interplanetary souls or angelic realm souls, which Dr. Michael Newton was able to really discover, in his regressions. So, but to answer your question for viewers listening, if you're, an earth-based soul, 95% of the time, you're gonna have 2 guides before you do get here who are there, with you before you're here and there with you long after. And usually people have 1 to 2, I would say, primary guides. They may have a name that you may be aware of, and they may not reveal it. Some people just call them the guides, which I do to this day. And they're there to really not give us the answers to the test, but to really nudge us along the path. Because ultimately, if you're given all the answers to the test, there's not an ability to evolve and grow as much as we can, because that's really, I do believe, what we came here to do in this experience. Now, angels are all around us, and that's really what I saw very clearly. And
What do they look like to you?
great question. The angels came in this bronze, kind of veil that I saw in front of me. They were kind of like this bronze goldish veil. And so, right, where my body was on the playground, I had people, trying to wake me up to ask me if it's okay. And I felt a form right next to it. And when I looked right in front of me, they were there floating very peacefully. So it's just like I said before, just this thin veil all around us. And they were very youthful and they were very young in what I saw. So I don't think these were archangels who were like 100 feet tall. They were kind of small, where the spirit guides felt, bigger to me. These angels that I saw were kind of smaller, but they were literally right in front of me, floating, just looking in the distance, not at me, but just looking straight ahead, just sending healing. And it was just one of the most beautiful sights that I have ever encountered, but just familiar. And it's amazing how we live on this earth and we just see this earth through our physical eyes. If we just tap our frequency just a little bit, it's amazing what's around us here. It's remarkable.
You've mentioned bronze a couple of times, Jacob. So, bronze, more copper, more gold, more kinda orangey goldish? What's bronze to you?
I would say it's kind of like a deep and darkened gold, if you will.
Okay.
So like a deep and darkened
Like an
gold.
antique gold almost?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Alright. 'Cause it's probably an amalgamation of different colors. I've heard from several people who've had NDEs who've said the colors are just phenomenal, and everything feels like it's in high def, and they say that the colors are just extraordinary, and we can't even begin to fathom them. Sounds like you experienced a similar situation.
Oh, yeah, and, like that analogy that I had, like, we just don't have I'm trying to find, like, the spectrum, but it goes far beyond what we have, but I'm using the these words or these terms because that's the closest comp that we have, but when we think of color on the other side, it's much different, where color has just a depth and a personality and a clear energy to it, where at times we see color on the surface, we may feel a certain way or not really know it, but there, it's undeniable, the color and the amount of depth that it has and how it has a life of its own to it.
Have you found that people are you mentioned that they're assigned a spirit guide. Are they assigned a guardian angel? I've been told by spirit that our guardian angel stays with us throughout all of our lifetimes. Did you encounter that at all?
100%, that they're with us all the time, and I would say the vast majority of us are earth-based souls, but, there are probably select fews that their guide, may be their higher self, and I have seen that before. Uh, but, I do think that our vibe attracts our tribe.
I love that. Our vibe attracts a tribe.
Our
I
tribe,
love it.
yeah, and
Our tribe. Yeah.
yeah, 100%, and so
I'm
in
gonna
this
perch that.
in this
I'll give you
lifetime
credit.
in this lifetime, I wouldn't be, like, attracted to I don't know, someone who's obsessed with golf because I never, like, think about it, but if you play golf, you'll probably have, I don't know, one of these legendary golfers as maybe your guide or something like that. Or if you're into fishing, you might have someone who is into that too. And so there's a magneticism undeniable magneticism that we have on the other side with their various interests. And sometimes they'll come in and come out throughout this lifetime. But yes, the primary, guide that we have, we could have other secondary guides or guides that we accrue throughout, this lifetime that may be attracted or find symmetry with their energy and ours. Or they may, kind of give us what we need as well. If you're someone who lacks assertiveness or stuff like that, you might need a guy that's more kind of direct with you and stuff like that. But I do think that there's an intelligence that goes far beyond our understanding, and it's not random as to why we have our guides, particularly that's the most pivotal piece of our lives that we can imagine. So it's not something randomly selected. It's very methodical and purposeful.
Do we choose them or do they choose us or are they assigned to us, do you think?
I think it's mutual. There's nothing that we wouldn't do that doesn't agree, with our greatest and highest good. So there's a mutual agreement that I had. And, I do believe it's mutual that these guides may feel a gravitational pull, to work with us, throughout lifetimes, and we obviously have to agree to that too. So there, to me, there's a halfway point I would probably say to that.
Also, do our guides show up when we need them at different times depending on what's happening in our lives?
Absolutely. It's not. There's no randomness. I really found that out clearly. Random chaos seems to be things that happen in the Earth plane at times, but obviously there's order when you're able to really see it from a different vantage point. But on the surface, yes. When I was having my near-death experience, I really saw loud and clear that this life is not random. It comes from a higher intelligence. It's charted, and everything is there in its proper time and place, unfolding as it should. As new agey as that sounds, I can't describe it any differently other than that. Things are not random. Things are really ordered from the orchestration of the other side, and the intelligence there. But that's a part of this life is really learning the value of being, I would say, humble and being able to be flexible. If someone asked me what's the greatest definition of health or mental health or spiritual health, I would just say adaptation and the ability to just kind of flow with life as it goes rather than just resisting life. And that's something that's really was a part of my NDE was just going with the flow and stopping to holding on to struggle or my own kind of pain, but surrendering to something, deep inside.
Let's back up a few steps.
Hmm.
You you end up in the hospital, your family's there, you come home, you heal. Did you immediately understand your life's mission when you came back, or did you have to grow up some and then go, "Oh, well, that's what that meant when I heard this or saw that in heaven?"
It was always there, but I had my doubts. I come from, a pretty academic, left brain intellectual family, and I was very much a struggling student, and that took a big toll on my own personal self-esteem where, even starting community college, I wasn't even allowed to take accredited courses. I was put in the lowest possible level of remedial, not accredited courses. And so for myself, there was a period right in my college years where I really was like, geez, like, do I have what it takes? Like, was I conned? Was I tricked? Like, what was I thinking? And that was very real. And then there was a moment in time where I acted out and kind of went at my parents, stuff like that, and they just said, "All right, you're just gonna stay with your grandparents for a little bit of time because you're not." And they were right in doing that, and so I just walked around my block, and once I was found myself in the playground. I just didn't even plan on it, and I just saw in that moment, no matter how displaced any of us feels, we're all just children in God's playground, and that was a message that came to me very clearly. No matter what was happening, no matter what we're doing, no matter what how much wealth we have or what people think of us, we all are eternal children in the playground of God, here to take care of one another. And then, a couple of days later, I was in a yoga seminar. Um, I was doing yoga at this time, and someone came up to me. I had no idea who this person was. And she just started saying things about me that I had no idea, like a lot of personal, intuitive things. But then she says, "Wow, you're going to be a healer one day. You're going to help out a lot of people. I see rows of people in front of you." And I'm like, I'm lucky if I'm just like whatever, in life. But she just reminded me that validation that I had that this is real. This wasn't just made up, and there's something there. And so from that, that really stoked a lot of more trust and belief and validity that what I saw wasn't just a hallucination, but something that was able to be validated through other people. And so that was pretty cool.
Do you communicate with spirit now? I think the answer is yes, and tell us how you do it.
I do. It's different. Like we all, I'm sure Julia, we all have different roads to eternity. For me, I do like to take walks and move, and that's like when they come to me, or even on my runs when I run around a lot, I get a lot of messages, or just listening to something like Claire de Lune, I just feel. my ancestors and spirit, but it's more so through the depths of my heart that I'm able to connect, and through really deeply feeling, the essences of life, and being very raw and natural, that it comes to me. So a lot of it is just learning how to get out of the way and quieting the brain. And that's when they come. But it's like a lot of clients come to me, they're like, oh my God, I have had great dreams when I was sleeping and my grandparents visited me and stuff like that. And I often have to remind them it's not, because it's 3 a.m., you have your salt lamp on, it's an ambiance setting that your grandparents, come through. They're always there, but our brainwaves are a lot more relaxed and receptive to be aware of spirits. And so that's, really what I try to do is just to meditate and get more in those deeper brainwave states when I do want to connect.
I call it that we go back to the factory preset vibration of spirit when we sleep because our brains rest and we go back to
Mhm.
we all come in on the
Yeah.
vibration of spirit. And when we're busy during the day, spirit doesn't communicate as easily. Well, they're communicating, we're not receiving it as easily on the I feel crappy channels because
Yeah.
it's just we're too busy and we're stressed and we're doing whatever,
Yeah.
picking up the kids at school and figuring out what we're gonna fix for dinner and doing the laundry and, you know, doing work stuff and doing other family
Mhm.
stuff, and it's a lot,
No, yeah.
and I agree with you on the nighttime thing. You say our loved ones are always trying to connect. What are the most common ways that they reach out to us?
Yeah. And, it's something that I experienced, when I had my NDE, where I felt myself as a spirit trying to reach out to people who are with me in the playground. So I could understand how they must feel, but they don't lose patience with us. They love us, but they're, trying to get messages across, in a way. Sometimes we view them as the afterlife, but I would say we are their afterlife, if that makes sense. Like, the lives that we live, they're connected to in a way. Like that's a part of their afterlife, and it's not the solo purpose, which none of us have a solo purpose. For instance, I think we could both agree, like, we're not here just to talk, in front of crowds on microphones. That is a part of it, and there's also, personal relationships and hobbies. And there's so many different parts of, our soul's purpose that just goes beyond the crux of our work. But, I would certainly say we have a lot more tools for them to work with. So it's a lot easier. And people are now trying to create these voice box type things, and I don't know how I necessarily feel about that. You want to be careful with using some of these Ouija boards or voice boxes, those kind of things. But I find technology is a big one that they try to use, and it could be so like hit you right between the eyes, and sometimes people just don't pay attention to how clear of a sign that is. So I think it's important for us to just be aware, to pay attention, to not try to come at it with the forcefulness, and it's just like this gentle tap on your shoulder, and just kinda pay attention to it and just say, "Thank you." "Thank you for blessing me and telling me that you're there and reminding me that you're with me and watching me." And, they want us, to continue on our journeys, and to live, you know, for them, but more importantly, to live for ourselves and find ways for us to live.
Mhm. I agree. What does the spirit realm most want us to remember while we're alive?
That's a wonderful question, Julie. I would just say really to remember who we are, to be empowered.
Who
Um,
are we really?
yeah, the interconnectedness that we have, and how, this isn't just about us. This is really about um, impacting the people around us, and in elevating those that we encounter. A lot of times we have a life that's based on ego, which is based on, all the things of the ego, our names, our jobs, our cars, all those things. And those are things are great. But if those things are self-serving versus trying to serve a greater cause, then that becomes, a bit of an issue. And so I think really understanding that we're here, yes, to take in, but also really about it's impacting our surroundings, and, making this world a better place, quite simply. But also they want us to enjoy that life doesn't have to be a struggle, doesn't have to be so miserable. That to indulge in this earth plane, we came here for an earth existence. And so do things that like I say, when you travel somewhere, do something you can't do when you're home. And so on the earth plane, I would say do things that you can't do in the spirit realm in a way. And the spirit realm, yes, we could do some of these things, but they're not as like grounded or dense as they are over here. And so we, in a way, our soul craves its opposites. When we're here, we want that, and when we're over there, we want the physical existence to some degree. So I would say fully embrace it, enjoy it, unencumbered and no limitations.
Well, I love your what you said earlier, Jacob, when you said we are their afterlife. And I thought, I never considered it that way, but boy, that's a big statement that resonates a lot with me, and I think that pertains to what you were just saying.
I'd love to take credit, but a friend and colleague of mine, Alison Dubois, I don't know if you know her. She's they had the show, The Medium, that was based on her life. I think it was on ABC, but she had a book that's really based on that premise. And so true. It was something that forever changed my life, but it was very much impactful. How, yes, we're always looking outside of ourselves and our loved ones, thinking that they're in heaven, and reminding ourselves that they're connected to us in that same facet, that they're really connected to what we're doing. And, we want to find ways to really keep them here. They love when we talk about them. They love when we reminisce about them.
Mhm.
Once we stop thinking about them and talking about them, that's when, they don't feel like they're here, or we don't feel that they're here, if that makes sense too.
Absolutely. You say that people don't have to wait to get to heaven to see the light that's within themselves because the inner light is omnipresent. What do you mean by that?
I would say, our reality, we're always like focused on the future, something outside of ourselves, to uh, get joy from. And I experienced this. There's a young child in an innocent playground, that even through suffocation, you could still see heaven. And it wasn't like a million miles away. It was right within my own backyard in the depths of my heart. But what I would say is by remembering this stuff and connecting to it, you don't have to wait until the body goes to really experience the home of your soul. And that's what the spiritual practice is all about. I think a lot of people come to me and they say, I want a near death experience, or I can't wait till I die so I could go to heaven. I said, how do you know you're not already connected to it? Maybe when you're sleeping, you have these, beautiful dreams. And I do think a large part of us in our higher self is connected to the heavenly realm. And so from doing this inner work, whether that's breath work, meditation, or just connecting to the depth of life itself, I think we are, connecting to heaven. And I do think when we're able to live an aware life and a life that we're able to embrace our passions, that's a part of really creating our heaven on earth. And I think someone asked me like, who is God to you, and what word in the English language is a best route to God. But I would say the closest word to the pathway of God is enthusiasm, because to me, enthusiasm comes from that Greek word entheos, which means the divine within. And so, when you're passionate about what you're doing, that's each person's connection to divinity. And so we see souls on the other side. Like some of them are going fishing, some of them are doing golfing. That's their pathway to joy, and that's the unique part of life is we all have different, paths up to the mountain, things that really work with us in a soul level, but a similar outcome of joy.
Right. Let's get to the practical for a couple of minutes as we're winding down here. Say that you help people improve their cognitive function. How do you do that?
In terms of helping people, well, that's really a lot of the work that I do as a therapist. I firmly believe what Wayne Dyer, who if you ask me like who's a guide of yours, I would say he's certainly one person who guides the work that I do. But he had a reference that said when you change the way you look at things, you change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And for myself, I would say a large crux that I do as a therapist is really helping people to shift, vantage points and recognizing that two things could be true. That yes, on one hand, that approach that we have towards an event may be very valid, and also I don't say but because but disqualifies it, and includes it, and is it helpful? Is it resourceful? And so I certainly believe what Charles Darwin said when he said it wasn't the strongest, it wasn't the fittest that survived. It was those that were most adaptable to shifts and to changes, that were able to really, go on. And so, with clients that I may encounter, what they walked into is most likely not their fault. But the crux of the work is the response and how we're able to develop a space between the stimuli and response. And so that's really the canvas that we try to work on with the clients. And so certainly we could have, all of these thoughts about it and emotions about it. We just have to ask ourselves, okay, is that helping me get through it? It may be valid with how we feel, and also, is it valid at a certain point to help me get through this? And so that really is a part of some of the work that we do. Psychotherapy traditionally calls it cognitive behavioral therapy, but I just say it's shifting our reality, shifting our vantage points, but more importantly, finding freedom, which is a big lesson in my NDEs, which is the value of beliefs, the value of thoughts, and how you know, I would say the higher the thought, the more we could be able to see, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Absolutely. Why are past life regressions helpful?
They certainly can be. For me, I would say, how does one find their purpose? And I would say there's a plethora of avenues to it. But one thing that I found is find something that's most painful to you and a big part of your life, and work that part out, and then understand that what happened to you wasn't meant just for you. It was probably meant for you to be able to relate to someone along your path, as we're all our brothers and sisters keeper. And why I say that, as a kid, I had a lot of night terrors of this, past life that I lived, and I just didn't know who to talk to about it. I just didn't have the words for it, and they would just come to me, and it would be kind of annoying. I just want to live a life as a kid, but all these memories would come flowing. And then years later, I read a lot of books by people like Dr. Brian Weiss and an individual named Carol Bowman, who was on the Oprah Winfrey Show and worked specifically with children who had past life memories. And kids often really do, because they have a lot of recall, and amnesia tends to be a lot lessened when you're from that window, probably from 0 to 5, and once you get up to 6, you tend to forget. But I would say it's very pivotal for a plethora of reasons. For one, it really can allow clients that we go on. We don't, once there is no death, so they're able to have that same understanding as an NDER has, without having to go through all that physiological trauma. But for another standpoint, it's able to understand the why. Why am I don't know, afraid of flying or afraid of the water? And maybe you've tried a lot of stops in the train and you weren't able to get the answer from traditional psychotherapy. And so doing PLSR, past life soul regression, could help people to understand the why. And if you understand the why, then the rest is easy. You can understand the how and the what in terms of navigating, that phobia, that challenge. I think it could evoke greater gifts. A lot of people that I see become a lot more intuitive through past life regression, or they're able to hone in on maybe something that they've collected throughout different incarnations that has been lying dormant or suppressed or repressed in this lifetime. So it's not all just pathology based. It, it can be, but a lot of it could be strength based. And growth is a big part of any type of past life regression that we try to do.
If you could share a message from the other side for somebody listening or watching who's really deeply grieving the loss of a loved one, what would that be?
It's a good question. I would say that you are not alone in your grief, that loved ones on their side are deeply able to understand, the great deal of pain as deep love, in a way that you have. And just because you don't have pain doesn't mean you didn't have love, but that can be a way of it. And I think they also want to remind us that there is life after death. But I think part of the grieving phase is finding life after their death. And we can do this through finding meaning, understanding who they were, what their impact was on us, and how we could continue to live not just a fixation, how they left this world, but how they lived in this world and what they were about in this world. And they want us to know that there will become a time where you will think of them and you'll feel a sense of joy, a sense of happiness. It may not be right now, but eventually they want you to really know that, what you're doing is perfectly normal. It's a part of the human reaction to loss, and also to really understand that they're with us. They can never leave you, and they are not the body. They are not probably how you saw them potentially at the very end. They want to be seen as strong, as vitality, and to remember and for you to remember them in the greatest moment that you experience with them and to continue with that legacy.
Beautifully said. You, when we first started talking, were holding it looked like a crystal in your hand. Can you show it to everybody and tell us about it? Yeah, it's pretty big.
Well, ironically, I have a cousin of mine who also had a near-death experience as an infant, and so later in life, we were able to really connect and bond. Um, but she has a gem show. She's in the Tucson area, and so, she sends me here and there some of the crystals, from the gem show. So that's why you say, yeah, it's pretty big because you go to these metaphysical stores, they'll charge you like 100 times, the price. But if you go to either the one in Tucson or Munich, Germany, that's probably the second biggest gem store. You could probably gem shows. You could probably find much bigger deals. So I love holding on to stuff, but also, um, when you're really able to tune into the crystal, you recognize how tuned in and amplified it could get your energy and how it has an energy of its own. And so, yes, you could read all the crystal Bible books and all these things, but it's really a matter of what do you feel in holding that crystal and what does it evoke in you? And for me, this piece of quartz really, I try to use it in most of my interviews because I know there may be someone who's hurting out there and just going through, a difficult time. And I know that words are, in a way, sometimes limiting from the spirit realm, but it's our best tool. And if I know that I'm really as connected as possible, that I know that the words aren't coming from me, they're coming through me, and you just never know where the worlds of the spirit realm can reach and how they can impact someone who's listening. Because some people, this may be like the one interview that who knows what, and they're trying to hold on to this conversation. You just don't know where those words can be and how that can change or impact someone who may be listening.
I think it's working. You're very eloquent. So I think the crystal's working. I'm glad to know about that gem show because, I don't have a tiara yet, Jacob. So I might be able to get a deal on one there. You
Well,
never know.
that's overdue, Julie. You
I
got to get on
I'm
that.
telling you. Oh, how funny. Oh, goodness. One last question. Why do we incarnate?
I think evolution, I think growth, I think love, remembering who we are, all those things are a part of it. And, really making this world a better place, hopefully, when our bodies aren't here. But yes, there's a lot of specific avenues for each soul. But in general, remembering who we are, spreading the love, evolution is all a part of, I think, each soul's experiences that we have here.
Wow, we covered a lot of territory. You did a good job of taking this circuitous route here of questions that I threw at you today. Obviously, when your brain cracked open and when you were talking about that, Jacob, I was thinking of a walnut. 'Cause the brain kinda looks like a walnut, with all those little nooks and crannies in it, and when you crack a walnut and it opens up. So, it came back obviously with lots of brilliance for you. You're obviously very brilliant. As I mentioned, you're very eloquent, and I think you have a great way of distilling down complex woo-woo concepts into understandable languaging that really pretty much anybody can grasp, and I find it fascinating that you, as a three-year-old, really were able to experience and assimilate a lot of this NDE stuff into your brain and your body so that when you grew up, it was there and it was easily accessible is what it sounds like to me, so, kudos to you. I'm just enthralled. How can people learn more about you and your work?
Yeah. Well, They could reach me at jacoblcooper.com. That's my website, and I'm on, social medias and YouTube as well. And look forward to having it in a couple months on my channel as well. I have a podcast called The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, and also have two books available that people could check out: The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder and Life After Breath. These are my two published books. But yeah, thank you for those wonderful compliments. But I'm just a vehicle. I'm just a vessel. But I think viewers hopefully can remember that, yes, on one hand, we may see ourselves as ordinary, but we all are extraordinary. As cliche as that sounds, we all have an extraordinary part. We just have to get out of our way, and we could all experience this extraordinary awareness that's always inside of us. Mm.
I agree, absolutely, and we didn't even get to the Jacob's ladder thing, so we're gonna have to we'll have to have you back and talk about that. That was a line of questioning that we got down so many other topics that I didn't get to it. Alrighty, everybody, sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from New York too, where Jacob is. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.